Have you ever seen a ghost of a love you thought was real? That's what it felt like when Thalia Hawthorne drifted through the apartment door, her stiletto heels dangling from one hand, a sleek black designer box from the other. A smile as polished and alien as the city lights outside played on her lips. A smile that had long since stopped belonging to me, Elias Landon. I didn't need to ask where she'd been. The cloying scent, a cocktail of cheap whiskey, a stranger's heady cologne, and something sharply synthetic that was definitely not her usual artisanal perfume, assaulted me first. It was the scent of a clandestine night, clinging to her like a second skin. She tossed the elegant box onto the minimalist glass coffee table, an act of casual disregard that still stung. My eyes fixated on the glimmer of silver tissue paper peeking from its opening, and a tiny folded card tucked beneath it, handwritten. I didn't touch it. I just stared, half expecting it to detonate. "Why are you up?" she murmured, her voice silk, effortless, as if the pre-dawn hour wasn't screaming of her prolonged absence. I just offered a slight shrug, my throat a desert. Not from shouting. I hadn't uttered a word in hours. My voice had simply evaporated sometime between the digital clock flipping to midnight and the first pale slivers of dawn. She moved to the kitchen, poured herself a glass of chilled water from the dispenser, and leaned against the gleaming chrome of the espresso machine, watching me, waiting. Still, I said nothing. The silence stretched, brittle and thin, until she finally sliced through it. "It's not what you think." I blinked. What I thought was that she'd spent the entire night at Kieran Price's, her ex, after casually mentioning she might drop by for a quick birthday toast. What I thought was that the shimmering, backless emerald gown she'd worn when she left wasn't for me. What I thought was that her phone, conveniently switched off, and my ignored messages, confirmed she'd chosen to stay with a man who once mocked my quiet demeanor by calling me the guy who services the server racks. So no, I didn't buy her flimsy denial. My gaze drifted back to the designer box. My hand hovered, then retreated. It wasn't mine to open. Not anymore. She caught my hesitation, a flicker of something akin to disgust crossing her features. "Don't be dramatic," she clipped. "I told you there was a chance I'd crash there. It got late. I wasn't feeling up to the drive." Her explanation hung in the air, a flimsy curtain. Still, I remained silent. With a huff, she snatched the box and retreated to the master bedroom, the door slamming shut with a definitive thud. I remained rooted in the kitchen, the seconds stretching into an eternity. This wasn't just quiet, it was the kind of silence that infiltrates your bones and takes root. The refrigerator hummed a lonely tune. From somewhere outside, a neighbor sneezed. The world kept its indifferent spin, but inside me something irrevocably shattered. It was then that I walked to my hidden home office, pulling open a concealed panel behind a bookshelf, a compartment she believed was merely decorative. From it, I extracted a slim, unmarked envelope. Inside were copies, compromised passwords, bank statements I shouldn't have seen, and a grainy photo from a mutual acquaintance who'd spotted her a fortnight ago at a different girls' night with someone distinctly male. I had been assembling these fragments for weeks, unsure if I'd ever fully commit to seeing the pattern. But now, what I'm about to show you is a blueprint for quiet vengeance. Now I had every reason, because what Thalia didn't know was this. While she was out, desperately seeking a rise from me, dancing, flirting, spending the night at her ex's place to prove some twisted point, I wasn't here drowning in sorrow. I was already 3 moves ahead, and she had no idea what strategic minefield she had just stepped into. That night, sleep remained a distant luxury, while she lay behind a locked bedroom door, barricaded as if I were a stranger to be feared. I sat in the hushed glow of my study, my fingers hovering over the keyboard of my custom-built workstation. I wasn't composing emails or browsing. I was watching the shared cloud drive, monitoring for new folders, deleted files, subtle modifications. I wasn't hunting for incriminating photos or text threads. I already possessed those. My focus was on the names, the friends who'd covered for her, the ones who'd whispered carefully crafted lies into my ears, assuring me she was simply navigating a phase. The bitter irony? I wasn't after revenge. I craved clarity. I longed for her to meet my gaze and confess that somewhere along our journey, I had morphed from a partner into mere background noise. But Thalia never admitted anything unless absolutely cornered, and I was utterly exhausted by the relentless chase of shadows. So I stopped playing defense. The next morning she emerged from the bedroom as if the night had been utterly unremarkable, draped in my oversized tech hoodie, an almost cruel mockery. "Do we have oat milk?" she asked, her tone casual. I watched her methodically prepare her coffee, her movements betraying no hint of the silent war zone our apartment had become. No apology, no conversation, no mention of Kieran or her unexplained overnight stay. Then a subtle shift in her practiced calm. Her eyes darted to the living room, specifically to the empty space where our framed anniversary photo had once proudly hung. The small, handcrafted wooden plaque, emblazoned with "Love is built daily," was also conspicuously absent from the wall. She didn't voice a question, but the fleeting moment of recognition in her gaze was undeniable. Around noon, I announced my departure. She didn't bother to inquire about my destination. That's when I knew. I had already ceased to matter to her, but she wasn't irrelevant to me. Not yet. My final devastating move was still pending. I drove directly to the high-rise office of an old acquaintance, someone Thalia didn't even know I kept in touch with. No lawyers, no melodramatic confrontations, just a seasoned financial consultant specializing in expedited asset liquidation. "I need this done in 48 hours, I stated, my voice steady. He regarded me, a flicker of surprise in his sharp eyes. "I'm serious," I added. "She won't see it coming." He nodded, a slow, knowing gesture. "That's the idea, isn't it?" Leaving that sleek, glass-walled office, I felt a sensation I hadn't experienced in months. Control. Not over her or her erratic decisions, but over myself. That evening, I returned to the apartment with a genuine smile. Thalia was engrossed in her tablet by the fireplace, as usual. She glanced up. "You seem off." I simply widened my smile. "Don't worry, darling. Everything's about to make perfect sense." Because what she didn't know was this. I had already sold the apartment. And the new owner? He was moving in Sunday. She just hadn't bothered to check the mailbox yet. Ready to learn the shocking truth behind her betrayal? Saturday morning, I cooked pancakes, just as I used to. Not out of a desire to play house, but because I knew the comfort of routine would lull her into a false sense of security. I meticulously set the table, poured her coffee precisely to her liking, 3 creams, 1 sugar, and waited. Thalia emerged in her silk robe, her composure unsettlingly perfect, as if she hadn't completely obliterated the foundation of our shared life just 48 hours prior. She took a bite, then peered at me with that familiar, smug smirk. "You're being unusually sweet. Did someone finally grow a spine?" My smile didn't falter. "You'll see." She had no inkling that the final, intricate puzzle pieces were already clicking into place. I had signed the last of the papers Friday night. The expedited cash buyer, an investor with an appetite for quick transactions, hadn't even flinched. A fully furnished apartment with a fixed move-out date was too tempting. He signed before I could even offer a second viewing. And the best part? I had scheduled the delivery of the notice for that very morning. All I had to do was wait for the distinct click of the mail slot. At precisely 10:17 a.m., it happened. Thalia was still lazily sipping her coffee when the envelope slid onto the polished concrete floor. She didn't react immediately, but I saw the almost imperceptible twitch in her eye when she registered the return address. Slowly, cautiously, as if sensing the ground beneath her feet already shifting, she rose. She picked it up, tore it open without a second thought, and began to read. One sentence in, the color visibly drained from her face. 2 more, and her mouth fell open. "You're joking," she murmured, the words barely audible. I stood, walked over, and leaned casually against the kitchen island. "Nope. This, this says the apartment's been sold, that we have to vacate by Sunday." Her voice cracked, whether from shock or burgeoning panic I couldn't discern. Correct, I stated, my tone unsettlingly calm. I've already moved most of my things. What's left is yours or trash. She stared at me, her eyes wide as if I were a stranger, and perhaps that was precisely the intention. You, you sold our home without telling me? You spent the night with your ex without telling me, I countered evenly, so I figured we were done with the whole mutual decisions charade. The paper slipped from her trembling fingers. Where am I supposed to go, Elias? I'm sure Kieran has plenty of room, I said. She offered no response, simply spun on her heel and retreated to the bedroom, slamming the door behind her once more. But this time, the resounding thud didn't echo like a barrier. It reverberated with the satisfying sound of closure. She didn't utter a single word to me for the rest of the day. The silence in the apartment was thick, almost suffocating, yet it was different. This wasn't the weary, awkward quiet of a dying marriage. This was the sound of someone realizing their meticulously crafted control was slipping, and they were powerless to stop it. I kept my distance. I wasn't about to be dragged into a last-ditch guilt trip or a hollow, forced apology. She had made her choices. I was simply tying the final, elegant bow. Later that night, I heard her pacing in the bedroom, drawers opening and closing, the rustle of fabric, the faint clang of hangers. She was packing, but not with the organized efficiency of someone moving to a new apartment. She was packing with the frantic, undirected energy of someone utterly adrift. I didn't ask. I didn't offer help. I simply sat on the couch in the dim light, watching the clock, waiting for her next move. She finally emerged around 11 p.m., dragging a barely zipped designer suitcase behind her. Her eyes finally landed on me, and I saw a complex cocktail brewing within them. Perhaps regret, certainly fury, and a definite undercurrent of fear. I'll never truly know. You blindsided me, she whispered, her voice tight. No, I replied, my voice steady. You just stopped paying attention. She hesitated as if poised to launch another volley, but instead she turned and walked out. She was gone again all night. No messages, no calls. This time I felt nothing but a quiet sense of peace. But when she reappeared the next morning, her aura was distinctly off, defensive. Her expensive mascara was smudged, and she looked utterly exhausted, not from crying, but from losing. She settled into the chair across from me at the kitchen island, as if we were negotiating an uneasy treaty. So, where are you going? She asked, her voice clipped. I raised an eyebrow. I'm not. I signed a tenant release with the new owner. It's a month-to-month lease, under my name now. Her face twisted into a mask of disbelief. You kicked me out? I gave you precisely what you gave me, I stated calmly. One night's warning. She let out a bitter, humorless laugh. You think this makes you clever? No, I said. I think it makes me done. A rare silence descended upon her. Thalia always had a comeback, always a ready retort. But this time, she had nothing. She stood, walked toward the door without a backward glance. Just before she exited, she turned her head slightly. You'll miss me, she murmured. I didn't answer. I simply watched her go. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like the one who had lost something. How often do we mistake silence for surrender? 3 days later, she still hadn't called, nor had she returned for the rest of her belongings. Yet I knew that her silence wasn't surrender, not for someone like Thalia. No, her quiet was merely a strategy. And that was what truly unsettled me. She wasn't the type of person who disappeared quietly. She was planning something, and honestly, a part of me was bracing for it. I wasn't trying to win. I wasn't aiming to ruin her. All I truly wanted was distance, peace, room to breathe. But deep down, I also wanted her to feel, even for a fleeting second, the exact emotional punch I'd felt the night she didn't come home. And maybe, just maybe, I wanted her to realize she couldn't keep treating people as if they were disposable. That's why, when I heard the distinct thud-thud on the front door Wednesday afternoon, I didn't flinch. I half expected her, but it was a courier. A plain brown box, no return label. Just my name, Elias Landon, scrawled in hurried handwriting. I brought it inside, sat down and opened it. At first I didn't grasp what I was seeing. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. Me, her, us. Printed copies of pictures I hadn't looked at in years. From our college days, our engagement, even a few from that spontaneous road trip we'd taken to the Vermont countryside. Beneath them lay a single sheet of paper. No personal note, just a stark, printed message. You made your move. Now it's my turn. I stared at the message for a long time. Was this a threat? A twisted game? I didn't know, but something about it felt deeply, fundamentally wrong. I grabbed my keys, walked into the master bedroom, and approached the bespoke built-in closet she used to claim as her own. Her side was largely empty, but the sleek biometric safe, discreetly integrated into the shelving unit, remained locked. She had always refused to give me the code, citing just girl stuff. But now I had the time, and more crucially, I had the unshakable motivation. After an hour of systematically trying every combination I could conceive, birthdays, pet names, obscure anniversaries, I finally hit it. A soft click echoed in the quiet room. The safe door swung open, and inside, nestled among a few forgotten jewelry pieces, was something I absolutely never expected. An envelope bearing both my name and hers. A suffocating mix of dread and insatiable curiosity warred in my chest as I opened it. Inside were legal documents, a prenuptial agreement, but not a prenup, or at least not one I had ever seen or signed. This one had my name brazenly forged at the bottom, and it contained a clause I would never, in 1,000 lifetimes, have agreed to. Something about joint business earnings and substantial post-separation spousal support. I couldn't breathe. Here's what no one tells you about betrayal. It's rarely about emotion and almost always about leverage. She wasn't trying to get me back. She was systematically preparing to dismantle my entire financial existence. And I had just evicted her from the apartment she thought was her first piece of the settlement. This was far from over. I sank to the floor, staring at that forged prenup like it had physically punched me in the gut. My name, her carefully replicated signature, dates, intricate legal terms, all neatly bound in a document I had never seen, never signed, never consented to. She genuinely believed she could pull a sophisticated financial con on the very man who designed intricate security systems for a living. That thought, in its sheer audacity, made me laugh. A dry, broken sound that lasted only a few seconds before the icy tendrils of panic wrapped around me again. It suddenly explained everything. The subtle shift in her attitude, the increasingly late nights, her terse replies, the way she deliberately tested boundaries without the slightest concern for consequences. She hadn't simply fallen out of love. She had been quietly, meticulously setting the stage to professionally dissect my life. I had merely accelerated her meticulously laid plans by removing her from the apartment before she could complete her setup. I scanned every single page. Each signature was a near-perfect match, but not perfect enough. Not under the cold, unblinking eye of digital scrutiny, not with forensic timestamps, and certainly not with the embedded metadata. Because what Thalia hadn't realized was that I maintained full, triple redundant backups of everything. Every file she had ever created on our shared devices, every synchronized cloud document, every forgotten draft on our old, rarely used gaming laptop. She'd logged into that machine once, shortly after our engagement, to organize important documents. She must have assumed I had wiped it clean. I hadn't. I powered up the dusty laptop and waited. 3 folders deep, I found it. A draft version of the prenup. Identical content, identical layout, a different file name, and at the bottom a faint gray test signature. She had practiced writing my name, over and over again, like a macabre artist perfecting her forgery. That was the precise moment I stopped feeling sorry for myself. I began screen recording everything. I took dozens of high-resolution snapshots, backing it all up to an external drive, and 2 encrypted off-site cloud backups. I labeled the files with chilling simplicity: prenup, she, fraud, Thalia. I wasn't bluffing anymore. Still, I didn't want to go completely nuclear. Not yet. Not unless she gave me an undeniable reason. Less than 24 hours later, that reason landed in my inbox. An email from an unfamiliar law firm. Subject line: Formal notice of divorce petition, Thalia Hawthorne. No accompanying message, just a cold PDF attachment and a number to call. She hadn't even bothered to text me. She was filing first, likely hoping to blindside me before I could grasp the scope of what she intended to take. But she had no idea that I already possessed every lie she'd ever committed to digital form, saved, meticulously cataloged, and timestamped. And I was no longer playing defense. The old Elias would have begged her to cease, but that version of me, he had vanished the night she left me waiting with cold pancakes and a manufactured smile. I didn't reply to the email. I didn't call the number. I let it sit in my inbox like a ticking clock, because I knew the second I acknowledged it, I would be forced into her rhythm. That's how Thalia always won. She set the rules before I even realized we were playing. But this time, I had already rearranged the entire board. So instead of succumbing to panic, I did something else entirely. I printed everything. The expertly forged prenup, the damning metadata, even the undeniable digital trail that proved the document had never once passed through my email. Then I called someone Thalia didn't even know I had lunch with once a year. Like clockwork, my uncle Noah Blackwood, a sharp, retired corporate attorney who still maintained his bar certification purely for intellectual sport. I met him in a quiet, upscale bistro, the kind that was always impeccably appointed and rarely crowded. I handed him the thick packet of papers. He flipped through them slowly, his patrician face unreadable. When he reached the forged document, his eyebrow arched slightly. He tapped the corner with a long finger. "This, Elias," he stated, his voice a low rumble, "is a felony." I nodded. "I know. She filed yesterday." "Indeed." He sighed, leaning back into the plush leather booth, and gave me that familiar, piercing look he used to bestow upon me as a boy, whenever I'd been wronged and done nothing about it. "Do you want revenge?" "No," I clarified. "I want out. Clean. Quietly. But if she pushes, I want this ready and waiting." He nodded once, a decisive gesture. "Then we wait." I went home and logged into an old forgotten VoIP account, one Thalia had never known existed. I'm not proud of what I did next, but I don't regret it. I used the account to stealthily join a virtual meeting her attorney had scheduled. They were careless. Left the virtual room unlocked. No passwords, just a simple waiting room name and a join link. I listened from the digital shadows as her lawyer calmly outlined their strategy. "Don't worry," the attorney assured her. "He's soft. He'll settle. No court, no noise. He's simply not the type." Thalia laughed, that same laugh I had once loved. "He's not," she agreed, a note of smug triumph in her voice. "He won't see any of this coming." I felt no rage. Instead, a profound sense of relief washed over me. Because now I had her voice, her explicit intention, her absolute confidence that I was still the same pliable person she had once so easily controlled. So, I hit record. The very next morning, I sent a single file to her attorney's office. No threats, no comments, no drama, just a simple, understated message. "Please review the attached audio before proceeding with discovery." Less than 2 hours later, an email returned. Their tone had shifted dramatically. The hearing itself was quiet, surprisingly civil, almost too calm. Thalia sat across from me in a tailored charcoal suit that looked expensive but didn't quite fit her as well as her former confidence had. She appeared polished, composed, even a touch smug, right up until the precise moment the judge uttered the word fraud. That single word shattered her carefully constructed facade. Her attorney's carefully managed smile dropped first. Then, Thalia's grip on the table tightened visibly. They had anticipated a standard procedural hearing, a straightforward asset division, a few signatures, perhaps some spousal support if they pushed hard enough. What they hadn't anticipated was my Uncle Noah, calm, deliberate, and surgically precise, sliding across a stack of meticulously compiled documentation, forensic timestamps, IP logs, and the chillingly clear voice recordings. The judge paused more than once. "So the plaintiff filed documents bearing a forged signature?" Thalia's lawyer stammered. "We were unaware at the time, Your Honor." But it was a futile defense. The judge didn't require a confession. The irrefutable evidence was more than sufficient. Thalia narrowly avoided criminal charges only because I explicitly chose not to press for them. I didn't want her ruined. I simply wanted to end it all with the unvarnished truth on paper. In the final ruling, I was granted full, undisputed ownership of the apartment. No alimony, no claims on shared assets. The judge even waived my court fees, citing the unnecessary complication introduced by the plaintiff. Afterward, outside the hushed courthouse, she attempted to speak to me. Elias, wait, can we just talk? I looked at her, truly looked at her for the first time in weeks. She appeared tired, diminished somehow, as if the imposing version of herself she had constructed was finally beginning to crumble. You don't have to hate me, she said, her voice thin. I don't, I replied, my voice steady. I just don't believe you anymore. I turned and walked away, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a side character in my own life story. It took a discarded toothbrush, a carefully constructed lie, and a brazenly forged document for me to finally find my spine. But I did, quietly, fully, and without a single raised voice. Just meticulous planning, unwavering patience, and finally a profound, liberating peace. These days, the apartment feels significantly larger, not merely because she's gone, but because I'm no longer shrinking myself to fit within its walls. Last week, I even signed up for a hiking group, something I'd always longed to do, but convinced myself was too much for someone like me. Turns out, I'm not as small as she made me feel. Turns out, I never was. This changed my life in 30 days. Imagine what it could do for yours.